Before the magic of Harry Potter lit up the world, there was a woman sitting in a tiny cafe, broke, heartbroken, and certain she had failed at life. When we see the name Harry Potter, we think of billion-dollar book sales, blockbuster films, and a fan base so big it spans every corner of the planet. But behind this magical empire is a story so raw, so human, that it almost feels like it couldn't possibly belong to the same woman who brought us wands, spells, and Hogwarts. This is the true unfiltered journey of J.K. Rowling, a journey from crushing despair to global triumph. And it begins far from fame, far from fortune, in a life filled with rejection, poverty, and pain. Joanne Rowling was born on July 31st, 1965 in Yate, Gloucestershire, England. As a little girl, she had always been a storyteller. Even before she could write properly, she was weaving tales in her mind. She would tell magical stories to her younger sister, Diane, often about brave heroes, talking animals, and imaginary worlds. She had a wild imagination, but like most children, she didn't know that one day this imagination would become her lifeline. Her childhood was not a fairy tale. While she loved reading and writing, life at home was not always easy. Her relationship with her father was distant, and her mother's health began to deteriorate when Joanne was still young. Her mother, Anne, suffered from multiple sclerosis, a disease that would slowly steal her strength over the years. Joanne watched helplessly as her mother's condition worsened. By the time Joanne went to the University of Exeter, she was already a shy and introspective young woman. She studied French not because she loved it passionately, but because her parents thought it would be practical for a job. But deep down, her dream was always to be a writer. After university, life took a turn. She moved to London, working as a researcher and bilingual secretary for Amnesty International. The job paid the bills, but it didn't fill her heart. She would write little stories on scraps of paper during lunch breaks, her imagination always burning in the background. Then, one fateful day in 1990, while traveling on a delayed train from Manchester to London, an idea came to her like lightning. A boy who didn't know he was a wizard. A boy with a lightning-shaped scar. A boy who would discover he belonged to a magical world hidden from ordinary eyes. Harry Potter was born in her mind that day. She didn't have a pen. She didn't have paper. But she had the story and it wouldn't leave her. But life wasn't going to make it easy. Just a few months later, tragedy struck. Joanne's mother passed away at the age of 45. Joanne was devastated. She had never told her mother about Harry Potter. Her mother never got to see even a single word of the book that would one day change the world. The grief was crushing, and Joanne poured her emotions into the story. This is why Harry's own experiences with loss in the books feel so painfully real, because they were born from Joanne's own pain. Looking for a fresh start, she moved to Portugal to teach English. There she met a man, got married, and had a daughter, Jessica. But the marriage was short-lived and filled with turmoil. Joanne found herself a single mother in a foreign country, struggling to make ends meet. She returned to the UK with her baby in her arms, no job and barely any money. It was the darkest chapter of her life. She described herself as the biggest failure I knew. She was unemployed, living on government benefits, and could barely afford to feed her child. Depression gripped her so tightly that she even thought about ending her life. But she had one thing: her story. She would walk Jessica in her stroller until she fell asleep, then head to a nearby cafe. There, with a cheap cup of coffee, Joanne would write. Page after page, she built Harry's world. She didn't write because she thought it would make her rich or famous. She wrote because it was the only thing that kept her going. Finally, after years of writing and rewriting, she had a manuscript for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. But the battle was far from over. She sent it to publisher after publisher, and was rejected 12 times. One after another, they said no. They said the story was too long, too strange, too risky for children. Most didn't even bother to read it fully. Many people would have given up. But Joanne didn't. In 1996, a small publishing house called Bloomsbury finally took a chance on her. Even then, they warned her to get a day job, because children's books rarely made money. They printed only 500 copies at first. Joanne's dream had become real, but in the smallest way possible. And then, magic happened. The book started selling. Kids loved it, parents loved it, teachers loved it. Soon Harry Potter wasn't just a book, it was a phenomenon. Sequels followed, each one bigger than the last. Hollywood called, turning her words into blockbuster films. The girl who once sat in a cafe with nothing but a dream became the world's first billionaire author. But Joanne never forgot where she came from. She knew what it was like to be hungry. She knew what it was like to feel like nothing would ever get better. And that's why she often says, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." Her story is not just about writing Harry Potter, it's about resilience. About holding on when the world tells you to let go. About believing in your own magic even when no one else does. JK. Rowling's journey teaches us that failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. Every rejection, every heartbreak, every tear she shed, it all led her to the moment when she could hold her book in her hands and know she had done it. Today, millions read her books, watch her films, and visit Harry Potter theme parks. But the most magical thing she's ever done has nothing to do with wizards. It's proving to the world that no matter how hopeless life feels, you can rise. And maybe that's why Harry Potter isn't just a story about a boy who lived. It's a story about a woman who refused to quit.